And we're live. So here we are with BLA, who's been so gracious with me for showing up. He's such a great guy. Fantastic, fantastic takes on literature, movies, and excellent out of the blue impressions on the spot. Uh,
Thanks, man. Yeah, appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me here. And I dropped the link so people will hopefully stop in here and get into the chat or in the comments. Yeah, really looking forward to this, man. I was glad to meet you on my friend DPH, David Patrick Carey, Church of the Eternal Logos. Shouts out to DPH out there. Got to give my friends
Shout
a
out
shout
to
out. Thanks
DBA.
for having me, man. Yeah.
So today we're gonna like be revisiting a couple of films that they're almost like 10 years from their making, Interstellar and Arrival. Like these are two big sci-fi blockbusters, super successful, like good directors, and honestly super impactful. Even like I would say that part of my own like spiritual awakening came through this like re-enchantment that is promised in Interstellar. Like Interstellar is a movie from the 2014. It's a moment in time where like we're coming off the disillusionment of the Wall Street crash, and like people are starting to ask like the meaning questions, like what are we here for? And it's got some great like one liners like we used to be looking for the stars, and now we're looking for a place in the dirt. So,
We used to be looking for our place in the stars. Now we're just looking for our place in the dirt. Yeah, it's True Detective. It's just True Detective. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, True Detective as well. Like Matthew McConaughey, like hit it off the ballpark. So,
Yeah, he did.
like BLA, do you want to take it away?
Well, I'd say that Interstellar is the father of a million memes. First of all, you know, McConaughey crying is certainly makes for a good meme. I like your take on how Interstellar, had this sort of post 2008 arc. I think that I haven't looked at it that way. I think that Interstellar is interesting because this was Christopher Nolan and Jonathan Nolan's not really first foray into space, but they were coming off of the Batman movies. I've covered The Prestige, which I think is Christopher Nolan's best movie. He did Memento. He did Insomnia with, which is an underrated movie with Al Pacino. Where's the sun? Why is it always dark here? Right. And Robin Williams as the spoiler is the bad guy. You know that going into it. He made two movies that year where that in 1 hour photo. Then they made The Prestige, which came out in 2000. So that was 2006. That's a fantastic movie. The book is great too. It's a fantastic movie. And then they made Batman Begins 2005. When I saw Batman Begins, by the way, I saw it in Malaysia. I was living in Malaysia, and it came out, and they edited one of the scenes. They can't show kissing on screen in Malaysia, so there's nothing, there's no kissing, so they had to edit that out. That was interesting. And he was coming off the Batman movies, and then he did Interstellar, and of course, this shows the director's ambition, right, is to make the great space opera. Every director wants to do this. They Spielberg with E.T., Lucas, of course. There have been so many space movies, and of course the movie deals with time. But one of the things that really gave rise to this movie was that in 2014 we were coming into the globalist green movement, right? And where, this had really come to a head since I was a kid. When I was a kid, they started the whole recycling thing. And that was big in the 80s and early 90s. And then it became, the green movement became a thing, not just the Green Party or whatever. I got to sneeze. It's coming. Hold on. But with Ralph Nader. Ralph Nader was the Green Party guy. He's the guy who got seatbelts mandatory in cars in America and all that stuff, whatever. But it became, renewable energy, and we got to escape the earth. And that gave rise, of course, with, SpaceX. I remember at the time, people forget, I think, that NASA lost funding, and that was the kind of vacuum effect that allowed SpaceX to come in and now they are sort of symbiotic, or I think DARPA is the real NASA. NASA's a kind of PR. But aside from that, this movie is really about. It's strange because it's about the end of the world, but it's not the end of the world, and like they have a long, long time to do it, and it also is like a Steinbeckian Dust Bowl. You get like the Grapes of Wrath within the movie with the whole dirt comment that you're making, the corn. It's also interesting that the corn, like they got to keep making the corn. It's the only real thing when everybody knows it's not real. It's Monsanto and all that stuff. But they all of a sudden, they got this one pilot, this Han Solo pilot. And I'll just say one more thing before I get off of my little spiel here. I saw an interview or a clip with Noel Gallagher recently, because Oasis is big back in the news. And Noel Gallagher said that usually the Oasis brothers, the Gallagher brothers, will not, they'll denigrate every celebrity. Got to sneeze. Sorry, I just said Dust Bowl, and now it's all dust. Very unprofessional. Sorry.
He's got the lung, the dust lung.
I got the dust lung. I got the dust lung. You saying my son, Casey Affleck? Casey Affleck, who disappears in the movie. I don't know what happens to him at the end, but you're saying he's not going to be smart enough? Oh, what happens to Casey Affleck? The movie also has Dune in it, right? It's got Timothy Chalamet. I forgot it has Timothy Chalamet as a young McConaughey, which is pretty funny, pretty good. But what was I saying? That Noel Gallagher said that there's one guy he really does like. He says, this guy blew my mind. He blew my fucking mind. Matthew McConaughey. He met Matthew McConaughey at a wedding, and then they showed a photo of the wedding. It was funny because I have a friend who is exactly like Matthew McConaughey. Like he doesn't look like him, but he looks like him. Like he's tall, built, he's a good looking guy, he's got all this like, I got wisdom. You know what I mean? And he talks like him too. He's got the same exact accent, the same voice. But anyway, so he met Matthew McConaughey at this wedding, and he said he's like a Star Wars character or something, all this wisdom. And I thought, man, this guy must have just heard of Matthew McConaughey, right? Because anybody hearing him is like, that's what he's going to do, right? But I thought it was interesting because he is kind of a Han Solo in this. He's a pilot, he's kind of a space pirate. And it's also got Matt Damon, who shows up in the movie. That was clever because Matt Damon had just done The Martian, and The Martian is Ridley Scott. I actually love the movie The Martian. It's like a comfort movie for me because I don't care about all the space propaganda and all that stuff. I just watch it and I imagine myself, what would I do if I were, because you can put me in the space pod and I'll live alone on Mars. That's fine. I could do, if they need a dude to do that, I'm fine. Like I'm totally chill with doing that. It's stupid how in that movie they have only disco. Why would the woman just have disco? Like she has one, whatever. Anyway, but he shows up against type, and I thought that was great that he shows up sort of against type. I'll get into this much later as we keep going through it. But those are my opening remarks on Interstellar. That's what I'll say about that.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say about Matthew McConaughey that he is single-handedly, let's say, the man to coin the McConaugheyisms and like the McConaughey sense. So like this is a moment in his career. Like he came from doing like stupid rom-coms, and then he did like this, and he had like True Detective season 1. Like he became like a serious actor with this. And
you talking about the McConaughey's?
Yeah,
that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. So, yeah. Listen, man. I gotta say though, McConaughey did those, and he did Reign of Fire, Dungeons and Dragons. He did Reign of Fire. He did, he did True Detective. He did this, and he won his stupid Oscar for that awful movie, which I hate. It's I hate that movie. I can't believe I even saw that. The one that he did the Oscar, he got the Oscar for, Dallas Buyers Club. It's awful, just gross. But, I think that this is, I don't know. I don't know what happened with him. And I like watching him, and I like his, because he's a great Hollywood A-list actor. He's been in space movies. He was in Contact. He's always in legal movies. He's a Southerner. I like that about him. He reminds me of my buddy. But I think that his his rom-coms are actually underrated. I like that era of Matthew McConaughey. I liked the 2000s era of Matthew McConaughey because everybody, listen, when the media gets on you for something you're doing and it's something that is not that bad, right? Like, oh, so he's walking around and he doesn't have a shirt on and he's driving around the country and he's hanging out with the fellas and he's drinking brewskis and whatever he was doing. I don't give a shit. That's fine. That's cool to me. Like that's fine. He's a movie star and he's living his life. So they all hated him for it. So then he has to do to make up for it. Then he's got to do this the Gross movie that he did and Ozempic and get all methed out or whatever. He looks skeletal, looks gross. And then he has to make this comeback. He should never have done that stuff. He could have gone into this without doing that. He could have gone straight into Reign of Fire. Reign of Fire, by the way, which I've covered, is a fantastic movie. He's amazing in that movie. He's very good. He's like a Dragon Kurtz or something. He's very good. So he is a good actor. He is also he's a Hollywood good actor. He's not a. This is my problem with Christopher Nolan movies, that the Nolan movies pack the movie with A-list actors, and we don't have an ensemble. We have people vying for character roles. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's clear that he's the alpha in terms of the cast, and he's top billed and all that stuff. But he finds himself having to prove himself through his character, and sometimes great actors just sort of breathe the character. They exist in the role. They don't have to have these moments where they're crying on stage. Crying is what everybody thinks is great acting in a film. And it's not. That's the bread and butter of an actor. Every great actor can cry on cue. It's just because you're a person who plays dress up. You put on makeup and play dress up, and you're an emotional guy. That's why you're an actor. So that's not really impressive to me, but I do like him, and I think this is a good movie. We were just talking about that. This is actually a pretty good movie.
Yeah. In fact, I want to like preface this because I got a long list of things to mention about Interstellar, but I wanted to start with the similarities between Arrival and Interstellar because they have a lot of them. One of them is the most obvious one, like redheads. Both of them have like smoking hot redheads, like taking like center stage. Arrival, the protagonist, and in the case of Interstellar, like the daughter of the protagonist, that is, let's say, framed as being more important than the protagonist in a sense. So that's one of them. They both deal with time, the desire to master it or transcend it. They also deal with like death and the fear of death and moving in uncertainty. Like Interstellar is all about like faith and love being real and necessary, and Arrival is like moving past fear by gaining ways of expressing yourself. They both have like a sacrificing daughter motif, which parallels Christ's sacrifice. They both say that the alien is unambiguously good. Like in the case of Interstellar, like the alien is us in the future, while in Arrival, you literally have aliens parking like on your house, like they're literally there. And this is very strange because this is a time where we're starting to hear like political narratives around like immigration, all those kinds of things, and like this is like the moment where like woke is starting to like form. Like it existed in academia, but it's starting to become, let's say, massive. And like here we have two films that in a sense are all about like facing the unknown, embracing it. Interstellar more in a, let's say, masculine spirit of exploration of like, I'm going to go there, I'm gonna like find a habitable land. Like it could be like space is kind of like a new frontier that mimics in a sense the ocean. It mimics sailors. It's like you're in a ship and all of that. Even the ship's called the Endurance, and it's the Endurance. Like they're trying to seed a new world. Like the ship, like there is a long talk about like human nature and like evil only like being brought by them. Yeah. And like there's like a Noah's Ark kind of thing.
Yes.
And and like the whole like Dr. Man being kind of like the traitor. Like it's a super interesting movie in that sense. While Arrival is the opposite. It's about basically, I think, my perspective, justification for of being raped, like all the rapist gangs that are going around like ravaging Europe, like, oh, they're just there, they're just there, like
Mm.
you have to accept them because like they're actually good for you, man. They're good for you. Like they're gonna give you the knowledge that you need. You shouldn't fire at them because like you're misinterpreting their actions. It's like, okay, the movie frames that situation that way, but my critique of that, let's say, position in Arrival is fundamentally, who says that there aren't any rules. Like something that I noticed in Arrival, then we can go back to Interstellar, is that the characters, they start conversations without introducing themselves. It's like the first moment that the military guy talks with the protagonist, like he looks at her while she's watching the TV and says something to her, like without introducing himself to her. Then the love interest Ian like talks to the CIA guy without introducing himself to them. Like the love interest Ian talks to her, quoting her pretentious book line to her, like without like knowing each other. It's like, who are these people who come out of nowhere and they're like I'm talking to you, just like there's no introduction there, there's no respect for the other person, and that's what we're being told is like normality. And this is actually not, let's say, a paranoid thing that I'm constructing about the film. It's actually a point about the film itself. Like, the point of the film is like, you cannot know before you know, right? Like you have to come out of your shell. The protagonist is super cloistered in her home, like she doesn't like the change, she doesn't like the outside world, and now she's being brought into this. But and ironically, and this is a similarity that like both Interstellar and Arrival has, the protagonists themselves embody virtues that they don't have because they're gaining it through the narrative. Like in the case of Arrival, the person to be like the one to speak for the aliens is the person who actually like shelters themselves from the world. And in the case of Interstellar, the protagonist is this person that is, let's say, talking about like the need to go outside to save the earth, while at the same time he doesn't like, his problem is he doesn't listen to his heart. Like he neglects his daughter in a sense. He neglects, for example, the appealing argument that his female companion does, that he says is biased, and he chooses to trust, let's say, Dr. Mann, who is like right there, and he's telling him my planet is the good planet, instead of going with Dr. Amelia Brands, whose name is like Amelia Earhart. Like she ends up being like stranded in that planet and such. But she makes like a good case with evidence why the place where her lover is the actual place. And if you look back, like that was actually the planet they had to go in the first place, right? So there's this like in Interstellar, there's this tension that the protagonist, let's say, fails at, but eventually succeeds through his self-sacrifice, which is actually, let's say, listening to what's important to the heart of man. So he ends up saving mankind by actually listening to what's necessary for the other person, in a sense, like repairing the broken nature that he was complaining about in the first place.
Yeah, what saves man in Interstellar is love, which is an unexpected, both a Hollywood expectation for a film and also something unexpected in the times we live in, especially. And I thought that was refreshing in the film. I think that Interstellar, both movies make a great case for the fact that scientists don't operate according to their own principles in both movies. Both movies involve lots of talk about data, and we got to get the data, and we got to get all this stuff. But like you said, they break into these conversations, philosophical conversations about the meaning of things that they're doing, rather than looking for the evidence and by their own, for looking at empirical evidence. And I understand that they're looking at quantum data and but that doesn't change it, because they're still looking at science, and either it's hard to determine whether that's a good thing or a bad thing in the movie. I think that it's a bad thing because they don't realize it, but it's a good thing that it shows it in the movie. But the problem is that the audience the average, and this is not the movie's fault at some points. It obviously, both movies are heavily propagandistic for science, man, for scientism. That's what they are on the surface. But I think that the problem is that audiences take away that science, man and science are going to save everyone. And even to understand what save means is up for debate that goes into the metaphysical rather than be beyond the physical realm in which they find themselves. Also, my big problem is, like, you've got so much time. It's just a dust bowl, dude. Like, to think that Sam Hyde made a great point with this, that to think that human beings have the capacity to destroy the earth as a whole it shows a lot of hubris, I think, because we may be stewards of the earth, but we don't control it. And I think that, Arrival goes in a different take, because it goes in a different direction in terms of time, but both deal with nonlinear time and this kind of, what is that? The eschaton. They're both dealing with the eschaton, and they're both dealing with I mentioned beforehand, I think of Yeats's term with the poem, The Second Coming. He says, turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart because his idea of time, which is a golden dawn, esoteric, occult, very Al Crowley, Al Crowley and Yeats were at odds with each other in the Golden Dawn society, but that's their sort of view of time, is that it shrinks and it's like a spinning top. And maybe there's something to that. I mean, I'm not pushing some sort of Gnostic viewpoint, but I'm saying that time, time is an arrow, time as a straight arrow is sort of still inconceivable to the human mind. And that's certainly, I guess, the part of the noetic realm. That's something that's God's territory. We live and die, and everybody who lives dies, and that's it. You might get to be Methuselah's age, but it's one thing that annoys me about Interstellar is that the concept of getting closer to the gravity of a planet, or not the planet, the Gargantua, which is a black hole, which they can see, which is they try to explain in the film, but the closer they get to it, then it becomes 7 minutes. So now there's the meme about, like, well, since Interstellar came out, it's been 1 hour, right, on Earth. And so, so the girl's getting older, and they just kind of go with that, right? Because they got to get the data. He's like, oh, well, we got to go for it, But it doesn't change the fact that you're imprinted with a DNA body clock, and that never changes. So I guess going through the wormhole changes the physics of time, but it doesn't change. I guess that's why they end up in the Tesseract at the end, in a 3-dimensional space within a 5-dimensional box. This is pure Carl Sagan. But there are certainly other. Okay, so here's how I'll sum it up. There are other dimensions, certainly, but I think that the other dimensions are the dimensions of angels. They're not the dimensions of, they're the dimensions of the spiritual world. They're not the dimensions of, oh, now I'm going to be inside the library forever, and but again, I was surprised by the amount that it is refreshing to see for the emphasis on the love of a daughter specifically in both movies. And I know that there are arguments to be made, with Sophia and the Gnostic paradigm with this, but just at a movie level, I like seeing this because, and that always hits home to me, because I don't have kids, and I wish I had a daughter, and so I watched the movie, and I love that about them. I love the end of Interstellar when she sends him back out of the room to be with her family, so he doesn't have to watch her, and she's with her grandkids instead of her dad because of the natural order of things. I thought that was pretty refreshing in the movie. And I did not like in Arrival how she can see into the future, and so she knows that her daughter's going to pass away, and then the husband leaves her. I didn't like that at all. I thought that was stupid. Why have that as the narrative in the movie? They have they've been brought together by, if you're watching the movie, they've been brought together by the end of the world, and the aliens come and they share this thing, and then he's going to leave her because of it. Come on, stupid.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So,
I tend to have a more negative view on those things.
mhm,
Like the way I read both of these movies is like it's kind of like a subversion attempt in a sense. It's like it's not that they're doing like a propaganda piece, but in the very attempt to subvert like a story that is, from my perspective, actually true, they end up like creating unwittingly like problems down the line. And it's the
mhm,
same thing like because both of these movies in a sense have like this very basic conception of heaven and earth, and they're trying to reconcile that like in the search for meaning, right? And
yeah,
like while I would say that Arrival is very openly gnostic, I would say that Interstellar is more ambiguous in that sense, but it's an attempt. And like you can argue to justify, let's say, that it being a daughter. Like I have an analysis of one of the early scenes of the movie because I think it tells a lot about this pattern. It's the scene before they catch the drone that is falling. I'm gonna try to like explain my views. First of all, like the movie itself, like Interstellar has a lot of like names that give you like cues and keys into what the characters are. Like for example, Cooper, like a Cooper is a fixer of barrels, like a fixer, a creator and fixer of barrels. What is a barrel? Is a vessel. What is a vessel? A vessel is also a car. A vessel is also, let's say, a plane. A vessel is also a spaceship. So he's the guy to repair the spaceship in a sense. He's the guy to, let's say, he's the Noah character. There's a scene early in the movie where the car breaks down. Like Cooper is with his two children, and like the eldest son like blames the daughter for being like named Murphy for Murphy's Law. He says she's bad luck. And there's no spare. So the fact that there's already no spare should clue you in into like the symbolic dynamic and what the movie is about. There is no spare. You only got this one life, okay? And you also see the relationship of the characters. So there is no spare. They need to fix it. Cooper tells his son, you need to learn how to live. Like you need to learn how to do these things by yourself, which is a preview of the fact that he will have to leave Earth, and that his son, in a sense, is by his own, let's say, personality, by the way the character is constructed, is always looking to his father to do like the right thing. You can even see it when he's driving, because when they see the drone and they start to pursue the drone with the flat tire, like ignoring life's problems, you have to move ahead, right? After we have the explanation of the daughter's name, like Cooper tells his son to drive, and his son almost drives them off the cliff if his father hadn't, let's say, stopped him. They make it into a comedic riff, which was like a little bit funny, but it's also like telling us something about like these characters. And his daughter like is the one to, let's say, look. She's holding like a sort of like scanner to get some information from a falling drone. Even the way the falling drone is called, like it's got like energy to power like the whole farm, right? And this is the meaning of life, man. This is the meaning of life coming into Earth. This is our daily bread. Like Cooper is trying to get that daily bread. Like the
mhm.
daughter is looking to see how to attain it, right? And like Cooper is like doing his hacking thing to be able to land this meaning
I'm
properly,
gonna
right?
hack a Hellfire missile and grow some corn. Yeah. Yes.
So so what we have here is like the daughter herself. This is a microcosm of like her trouble in the film. It's like, oh no, we lost it, because it appears like before they almost fall, it appears as though they lost the drone, and the main character, the protagonist, says, no, we actually got it, right? And this is going to foreshadow her stuff with believing her father, like her father is who he said he was, right? Because his father, the main character, makes a promise that he doesn't know he can keep. Like he's promising her, after this trip, I'm gonna come back. Like you know. And like the way the film deals with it, I think is a little bit imperfect, because it actually justifies like giving your word for something that you don't know how to keep, because you got to tell some lies to your daughter, etc., etc. But
Yeah. Well, let me break in there real quick with the word thing that you just mentioned, because that's one of the important things. Is that it's the movie show. I think all the stuff with him and his son at the beginning is positive. I think that the way that I understand the esoteric analysis of it, and that's certainly true on a level. But I also think that the way that he is concerned about his daughter and not his son shows that, look, you got to learn how to do these things, because I'm going to be gone, and you got to be a man. You got to do it, So I'm telling you not to drive off the cliff, so you got to deal with it. And the way that later on Casey Affleck has, that their does their daughter pass away, I think, or almost does, and he deals with it in a good way. He's trying to keep the farm going and all this stuff, and it's the daughter that ends up burning the farm, And I think that he ends up being pretty well adjusted, considering. I mean, he makes himself into a man and he does what he's got to get done. I don't like that the daughter gets so angry about him about leaving and then stays angry for 4,000 years. That shows why she needs a mother around. She needs a mother to, be like, look, your dad had to go do, if you look at it in, like, when I covered the Anglo-Saxon poems, if you look at it like in the Seafarer or Beowulf, or in the Wanderer, or the Seafarer specifically, when the dad is at home with his family, he wishes that he was out on the sea. When he's out on the sea, he wishes he was back home. And he's a pilot. He's been given a gift, and he's a great pilot. And he finds, with his family, the GPS coordinates of the science place. And for some reason, they're building the rocket inside of the facility, which is kind of weird. There's no way to move it. Like, they're inside of the Guggenheim Museum, and what are you going to build it up and then take it back apart and put it back outside? It doesn't make sense. But the daughter stays angry for all this time until finally she's given a signal from the outside. And then when he proves her right by returning, instead of having the kind of faith in her dad that would mimic, the faith of a Cooper is also a kind of carpenter. So he's playing we see that, through artistic license, he's playing a kind of Christ-like figure here, at least in Nolan's eyes. So he's gonna sacrifice himself for humanity in some way, if not just for the journey itself, but that his daughter here, doesn't trust that he's going to do this, and then finds a surrogate father through Mr. Science Man, which is Michael Caine. And Michael Caine, of all people, with what you were just saying about your word, is the one who intentionally breaks his word and lies to her. And he lies to everyone. So he had no intention of solving the thing. He knew it couldn't be solved. And it was just to get him out of here to go find the exoplanet, which, if you were going to find some sort of nobility in that, this is my problem with, I watched like 7 movies in a row where this just weirdly popped up. It was Mr. Science Man or government man finds the truth of something, but the people can't handle it, so we have to lie to them. And it always is that way. And it worked. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it works in the movie because they end up coming back, but the guy didn't think they would ever come back, is the point. And also, my other problem is that I'm not sure that they understand the meaning of the poem, the Dylan Thomas poem that they quote in the movie. I'm not sure that they get it. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. They repeat it as if it's a prayer, and it's not a prayer. It's a Dylan Thomas poem, and the poem is ambiguous because the poem is both about rage against the dying of the light, means fight for everything that you have in life, but it also means you can also read it on a level as accepting the light of the afterlife, accepting lightness and goodness. And he repeats it as a poem, as a prayer in the poem. I mean, in the film. So.
I had the same first observation, but like I try to be charitable with a film, because I was already, let's say, predisposed to like take it apart, and because I've seen it so many times, and I liked it at first, and now I'm a little bit more critical about it. And what I'd say is that it plays with those that ambivalence of the meaning, in the sense that what we have in the character of Dr. Brand, this guy, it's like kind of like the evolutionary perspective of like just propagate your line, just like say,
Mhm.
because if plan B is like we have in
Yeah.
Interstellar, we have plan A and plan B. Plan A is like we save the earth as it is, we save the people that's already living, and plan B is like we send these test tube kids and repopulate like another planet with these kids from test tubes, like from from harvested from
Do you
from test.
do you think that they realized when they called Plan B, that Plan B also is a pun on a name? Do you think? I don't think they realized that Plan B is an extinction drug. It's a life ending drug. I mean, I'm being loose here, but I, how could they not have how could they not have thought of that? That if you're going to have if the whole thing is going to be about test tube gub gub snail man, or they're like, we have the first of all, I hate, oh my gosh, I hate it when when people talk about eggs. It's just like you're talking about possible human beings inside of a test tube, and they're calling them. It's just that sort of matches the Gnostic egg in Arrival that arrives. But anyway, I think that I bet what happened with this movie is that they meant to use Dylan Thomas's "And Death Shall Have No Dominion," but they got the wrong poem, and then they were already too late into the filmmaking process, and they were like, "We should have used that poem, and death shall have no dominion." They they should have used that. That we're not going to die. That the dominion is Christ's dominion. I mean, maybe they use that purposely because it's not a Christian movie. Although all art has a Christian provenance in it. I mean, especially Western art, it has to.
Well, like
What you were mentioning with the Ark, John Lithgow as the kind of uh, you know, what character would he be? I mean, he literally says to his son, go forth and populate the earth, right? Which is interesting because that contradicts what they just said in the movie about the fact that nobody's being born anymore. So that was a little weird. Uh, Also, they have the New York Yankees playing at the baseball, and they're in Oklahoma or whatever. Give me a break, man. Come on. But
yeah.
it is a good movie though. But like you said, you got to be generous with movies, and I think this is a good movie, and it's certainly just in a cinematic experience. It's certainly watchable, and it's really interesting. Also, by the way, what's her name? What's the lady's name in it? The Princess Diaries, the Anne Hathaway, Shakespeare's wife. Anne Hathaway does the thing that I've called so many times, which is women wearing pants in movies always put their hands in their pants. Have you noticed that? Always have their hands in their pockets. The minute she gets out of the pantsuit in the sciencey scenes, she doesn't have anywhere to put her hands. But they always do this. Next time you guys watch a movie, wait for a woman who's wearing like pants or capri pants, and she'll have both her hands in her pockets the whole time.
Well, since we're on the topic of women in film, like I think Interstellar actually has a feminist message, in the sense that in the end, I don't know if you've noticed, but they literally, like when Cooper arrives and it's named after her, right? It's named
Oh, it's
after her.
named after me. It's Moonbase McConaughey, and they're like, it's not named after you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but and then you see them play you see them play baseball, and like they literally break a glass ceiling because
Yeah.
yeah. So I thought that was
Clever.
funny,
Yeah.
but like we also have like this common trope that we now see in films, where it's like the male has to kind of cede, he's like cede, not in the sense of like the seed, but like to give his place for the woman, right? And the same, like we have like the only woman of the team that is like being, let's say, the one to finish the mission, because like the protagonist like sacrifices himself, right? Like I don't want to be too nitpicky about these things, but like those are like, if you take like the smorgasbord, if you take like the whole landscape of movies, like you start to see like these tropes start to like they start to like to prop up women a little bit more. And like it's not that I have something against that per se, but the way in which it is done seems kind of like um stale and sterile in the sense that, for example, both of these films, both Arrival and Interstellar, they both have romances that are never on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Like they in the end of Interstellar, it's like they tell the protagonist Cooper,
They
like, you
clearly
have
are
to
meant to
go.
be together. Yeah, they're clearly meant to be together, right? Yes. I mean, yeah,
It's like, it's like,
yeah,
why? Like they never actually showed romantic interest in each other. Like
yeah,
they had banter, but like, and it's like this like Adam and Eve kind of stuff. It's like we're gonna force them together, and then like it's the same thing in Arrival, except they then have to split after they make the like so it's kind of like a touch and go because you can tell that the male character likes the female character in Arrival,
mm-hmm.
but like on her side, it's like she's almost ambivalent. It's like, okay, this dude is a dude. Like he has the parts. I have the parts. So let's
Yeah,
smash the parts together.
yeah.
And it's like,
Jeremy Renner. So I don't. I've heard things, but I mean, it's like you're right. In Arrival, what happens is he's the beta in every single meaning of the term. He's second in command. He's following her. Even his kind of Gumby way of following her. He does have. I mean, it's not that he doesn't have game eventually, because when they sit down on the trucks and they're talking, look, man, it's like that thing of when they sit down on the trucks and he says something about he mentions the word single. Okay, now no man and no woman are ever together and they mention the word single, or like, he's like, I don't have a girlfriend. If she says, oh, I don't have a boyfriend. I mean, that's clearly, those are the signals that are happening. But it's kind of unbelievable at the end, when it's a touching moment at the end of Arrival, when he says, I looked up into the stars and I really should have been looking at you. She's the star. She's the star. She's the alpha here. But also that it's a touching moment, but it's kind of unearned in the movie. We see them getting together through circumstance. And why wouldn't they fall in love? I mean,
yeah,
why wouldn't McConaughey fall in love with Anne Hathaway in the movie? I mean, they're both on the ship for a long time. They leave the poor black scientist up there for like 20 million years, and they get back up there and they're like, "Did you solve the data?" And he's like, "Not yet, motherfucker." Right? Like, this poor guy. They were gone for 7 minutes, and it turned into 700 years, and he's just been up there watching Family Guy the whole time, which is funny. But I also like. I like and don't like TARS. I think that the way they did the robot in Interstellar is pretty clever. You can't go into space. It's like an apocalypse now. You can't go out into space, man. You can't go out into space. What are you going to land on? 1/4, 2/5, man? That's dialectic physics, man. Dialectic logic. You either love somebody or you hate them. This is the way the fucking world ends, man. Not with a bang, with a whimper. And with a whimper, I'm splitting, Jack. You can't go out into space without a David from Prometheus. You got to have the robot, but you also got to know the robot's probably going to try and kill you, But it's like in the movie Moon that I covered, which is Duncan Jones. David Bowie's son made that great movie Moon with Sam Rockwell. I love that movie. And that one's about clones and DID and all this, globalist corporations, the moon, whatever. But you can't go up there without that, because that guy has to program you into the drowning pod. Right, which is crazy, because who's going to get in the body bag to drown to death and think that that's going to be? McConaughey takes a little longer to get in his body bag, and I kept thinking, if I were him, if I were Matthew McConaughey, I would just chill. I wouldn't get into the sleeping pod. I would just wait out the trip to Mars. You don't need to go into hypersleep for that. Who knows if you're going to wake up? That's crazy. Just go to sleep normally. But TARS, they did pretty well. TARS is the name for the folks at home, is the name of the robot that they have. And I did like what they did with this. They made it completely unhuman. So when you look at it, you don't have the what's the word I'm looking for? You're not tempted. Yeah, you're not tempted to look at the robot and give it human feelings, because it's a walking like cube thing. Because even if we look at R2D2, who speaks in bleeps and bloops, we still give it a kind of human. It has human characteristics in its humor and its movements. This thing doesn't really have that. It does have a human voice, which we listen to, which is funny, because when they program it, it's like clearly it's some surfer dude that they found. He's like, I don't know, man. I think he's making jokes. But that, in a way, that also alienates them from the robot, which is kind of clever. And it's got the code, going across the screen. So I thought that was pretty cool. But the problem in the movie, though, is that the way when Tars speaks, you can't hear it. Like, I don't know if you had a problem hearing Tars, the robot, when he speaks, but like when I saw it in the cinema, they turned the volume down on the robot so much that either that or the actor is mumbling his way through his parts, his sides. So it doesn't really work. But Arrival didn't really have that. We have something different. Arrival did something very clever, I thought, which was to present the Leviathan H.P. Lovecraft squid monsters as the future aliens. And that's pretty cool, because we usually get the little green man or something that's human like, and we don't get anything that looks human. I mean, it looks like Knuckles moving. And it actually turns out that this is not the alien, the Knuckles thing. It's actually a big, gigantic beast with like a brain head, but no eyes. So it makes sense that the thing that if there were aliens, that the thing that we look at would be totally non-human. We would not understand it at all. So I thought that was pretty clever, but it also makes us look at it and go, oh, these are clearly spiritual beings. This is some sort of fallen angel beast from the abyss that's appeared on the other side of the veil, the iPhone screen veil. So
yeah, no, completely agreed. I want to backtrack a little bit to make a comment on the shape of the robots. One thing that I noticed is that they are awfully similar to the monolith of the Space Odyssey, and
yeah,
and I wanted to also explore a little bit about like both like I mentioned that there was a simping semi-simping in let's say in Interstellar, but I also see it in Arrival, in the sense that there's one key scene where like the protagonist of Arrival, who's like this like language translator, she goes out on a limb, breaks protocol, and to particularize herself in order to, let's say, show the aliens that like human beings have individual identities, right? But like this doesn't work if you just do it yourself, right? You need another person to do it. And like now I'm going to take this first example, not just of simping, but let's say of the way, let's say, protocol is broken, because like here we are on a like life and death defining situation that is being overseen by the US military, and she breaks protocol. And later we learn that the US military like is fine with killing people if it gets like if it like gets his way. So like she's breaking protocol, the military people are not stopping this, and we have the simp guy who is necessary for this to happen just simply like break protocol for this person that is doing something that is out of bounds. Now this is not the first like you can be mean with movies and you can like destroy them, but like this also shows, let's say, the way in which the military is being, let's say, portrayed in these films. And in both of them, the military is super cucked, in the sense that it's there to be, let's say, to legitimize the protagonist and to be like a performative authority that actually has no authority and only serves as resources for the protagonist. Why? Because the way that the protagonist and the military relate, and the way in which the protagonists themselves are, let's say, rewarded for their disobedience. So, for example, in Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey breaks into the military base with his 10-year-old daughter. Like, you have to be insane, not just to break into a military base, a secret military base, but to do it with your 10-year-old daughter. You're risking the life of your 10-year-old daughter. Like, like just before this, we have a scene where, let's say, her daughter, Matthew McConaughey's daughter, his daughter is like having issues with her classmates because she's like, let's say, promoting a conspiracy theory that NASA is actually real, right?
yes.
And like Cooper, Matthew McConaughey's character, not only doesn't punish her, but he rewards her, right? So here we have like, and this also happens in Arrival, in the sense that the main character disobeys, like breaks rank, breaks, and this is seen as something good within the construct of the film. And this is, let's say, something that I see as a pattern within, let's say, Western storytelling after a certain period, which is, let's say, kind of like this underdog, this outlaw thing, this, let's say, MacGyver, this out of, like, this out of breaking the mold, out of place, but like kind of godsend a character, the genius artist, the self-made man, those tropes of the like rugged individual, the person that is, let's say, so special that
Yeah.
they have to break
The troubled
society
genius.
rules.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
The
and
troubled,
and this,
the house style troubled genius. Oh, which there's something to be said for that, I don't know. I was thinking of the movie Flight. It's like the person who's really out there. I mean, look at Tesla, right? The person who is. It's like okay. It's like Kanye says. I'm going to quote Kanye here. Gotcha, gotcha. It's like Kanye says. Kanye says, "Have you seen him say, I might be right. I'm just not right now." Right, which is to say that. And he loved that. He loved saying that because he was like, get ready to tweet this. I might be right. I'm just not right now. And everybody's like, yeah. But he's actually right in that sense, that oftentimes the troubled genius seems crazy, but is the one to break the mold, like you said. But intelligence and military do promote these people. I mean, especially special ops, and the French Foreign Legion does this. Intelligence does this, to be from the establishment or make your way into the establishment, but to break the mold and be somebody who's eccentric or crazy, to take risks. But I think that both movies, it's funny how both movies are obviously they're military propaganda, but like you were saying, they show a kind of a, we take it as that they're both cucked in a sense, but they're both inverted. What happens in Interstellar is that what happens? Oh yeah. So as if in whatever many years the status quo establishment is going to be the moon thing, and that it never, that we didn't go. Like it's going to be the Kubrick view of the moon, as if that's going to be the status quo. That will never be the status quo. That will never be the thing. And they're making it out like, oh, you got to be dangerous and special by questioning that, because science is really the thing. Everybody. The days of Magellan and all that are completely flip-sided now. It's totally flip-sided. It's that science is going to save you, and that you're the kook, right? The same thing happens in Arrival, because we have the Al character, we have the Al Jones character, we have the AJ character, who it's funny. So many movies do this about this stuff. Even the episode of even the season of Homeland that they made in 2016, 2017, the Ruby Ridge season, has a clear Alex character. And this one is the Alex character is saying, the military needs to, and it's like, no, the military would be the military is the one, they're the ones enforcing Agenda 2050. They're the ones enforcing the fake alien invasion. So it's a little bit crazy and convoluted how it happens. Now, one thing refreshing about Arrival is that there is the CIA character who does point out that, look, unlike he's like, yeah, have you seen me, Dr. Lecter, in every other movie? Every other movie shows the aliens coming and we got to be friends with the aliens. Now, this movie ends up doing that. But clearly, if the aliens invade, right, they're not aliens. They are DARPA, or they're interdimensional beings. It's the end of the world. So they're here to squash you like an ant. That's what they're, or to bring on to immunize the eschaton, whatever it is, it's the end of the world. So clearly that's going to be the case. But I do like in the movie, the guy's like, no, that's probably the case. So we got to make sure. Now it ends up in a kind of a globalist one world government. But here's what I have to say about that on the one hand, in one sense, I think people probably forget about this. We should be, at least on an individual level, there's no reason for us to be at war with each other. We should be, there is in many senses, but in terms of like, why is the United States at odds with Russia? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's because we need some exterior enemy. There's no reason why we can't live in a harmonious world and be peaceful with one another and promote good things. But we need, but the movie ends up being the globalist hegemony where we have the 1984 Brave New World where we're going to get rid of all the old things and because obviously the point of the globus world is to depopulate. That's the whole point. And so it's just a sort of a propaganda piece, both of them, to show that, we're going to live in a world and, you got to bow down to the overlords or whatever it is. But I do think that they are good movies in terms of, at least, they get us looking at them and make us think about those things. Not that we already don't, but to see them sort of dramatized in a good way, because they are well done movies. I mean, Arrival, my problem with Arrival is that it begins on such a somber note, and it's clear. It was clear the first time I saw it that this was going to be the eternal return. We were going to come back to this moment. She's going to be weeping for her daughter or whoever it is that we see, and that's going to happen later in the movie. I just don't know how we're going to get there. But when we begin a movie with the somber cello notes and the gray skies, and then she goes to the Pale University, and the guy comes in and says, we really like what you did with those translations. And she's like, well, I really, yeah, you made quick work of those Houthis or whatever. And it's like, okay, so she's already an intelligence asset with the top secret clearance. So she's already an intelligence. That's how they farmed this out to her. But the thing you were saying earlier about the conversations, I do appreciate sometimes that they do away with introductions, because it begins in media res and we can just get to know the characters and we don't have to have a backstory. But you were right that there is a weird kind of disconnect between some characters and a sort of alienation. Like the Forrest Whitaker character as the head of the unit never stops to think or says that, okay, there are 12 of these. There's something spiritual about this. We have 12 visitors to foreign places. We were not thinking about some sort of alien disciples or some sort of inversion. The thing clearly looks at first like an egg, like a black egg, like an alien black egg, but it turns into a kind of contact lens, like an all-seeing eye looking out over the landscape with these leviathanic, archon knuckle monsters or whatever, which turn out to be, they turn out to be good in the movie because they save them, they save their lives. But, the movie is that they are here to save us from each other, which is, again, the thing that we get in all the movies. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And which is, it feels like in the same way that it doesn't read cues, it doesn't read like interpersonal cues. Like the film itself is kind of like an answer to a question we haven't asked, and it's like it's like I'm giving you. It's like a rape. It's a form of rape. I see it as a form of rape. It's like in the same way that if you park your car in my driveway, you're invading my space, man. Like, in what let's say world does it make sense that an alien race that has let's say the technology to build these sophisticated ships needs 12 of those, and it needs to actually bring them physically close to you, and they cannot communicate, they cannot send a little probe, they cannot communicate, let's say,
by the way, what was their purpose? Because we know that the purpose was the language, to give us their language, but it's that they're going to save us in 3,000 years. What did we do for them? I don't understand what we did for them in the moment. What was it?
Like they thought that they said that they would need our help in 3,000 years because they can see the future. So now they're giving us the language so that we can be able to help them in the future, right? So,
okay.
And all I was thinking was like, these are the Nephilims. This is this is like fallen angels come and give us technology, and technology is the thing that we needed. This is not a Tower of Babel, guys. This is just like man, like being able to reach God. Like now we apprehended the future and the past. We know everything. Like you become basically omniscient, but you have to be, let's say, willing to die. If you're willing to die, then you're going to be omniscient, and that is Gnosticism, man. That is alchemical fantasy.
It was also a black pill. Did you notice that she gets in the black pill? and goes up into the spaceship. She literally takes the black pill up to the
Yeah,
space station. Um,
yeah,
but my
yeah,
question with it was, these are the Cetians, right? We got the Pleiadians, we got the planet Nibiru, which is where they go to in Interstellar. But these are, why didn't they? So she's listening to these aliens go, right, which clearly sounds like whales, and they look aquatic, like they're swimming around in the thing. I would think that she would have been studying. They never mentioned whales because Star Trek Voyage Home clearly is they were attracted to Earth because of the auditory sounds of the there's whales are weird. Uh, whales are definitely weird because they look like space creatures, right? Sort of, and they're swimming around in space. I mean, the water's a form of space. They probably do, all the NASA in space and water and all that stuff. And they're in this giant, this water world. Great movie, by the way. I'm going to say it. Waterworld is a great movie. I love that movie. Everybody hates that movie, but I love Waterworld. It's got Jean Triplehorn in it, man. She's so fine. Anyway, um, so they clearly sound like whales. So it seems like it. I was just thinking when I was watching it, it seems to me that if whales are so bothered by sonar, right? Because that's why, I mean, Trump even talked about this. They got the whales, right? Because the whales keep ending up on the beaches because of the sonar communications. So if that's the case, and we keep sending radio signals out, and we can hear whale sound is resonant through the water, then why wouldn't that be the thing that you would hear in deep space on an ultra low frequency or ultra high frequency? Why wouldn't it be the whale sound? It seems like that would be the thing. And maybe that's why they mimic the thing that they do. And they ink blot like octopi, right? They have this ink blot language. I do think it was cool how she brought up the kangaroo analogy, right? Captain Cook getting to Australia, they pointed the thing, what's that? And they say kangaroo, and it means we don't understand you. I thought that was cool. And also desire for more cows in Sanskrit. Obviously she studies ancient languages and she gets all that. I thought those were cool. Those were kind of cool elements. But when she's in the helicopter with Jeremy Renner at the beginning, and he says science, she's like, language is the cornerstone of civilization. He says, no, it's science. Then why didn't she just respond, yeah, but you just said that to me in words, right? You didn't use numbers to tell me.
Yeah. Well, I think there are several threads out there. One, to go back in order. One would be like, within the framing of the film, there is no difference actually. Like, even though you want to like oppose science and technology, let's say, or science and language, like all of this, like the language of the gods that they're receiving, the language of the aliens, is a form of techne. It's a form of, let's say, the written word that unlocks this. It's all techne, right? It's a form of, I think it's a parasitical idea on, let's say, the tabernacle not made with hands. It's kind of like a parasitical idea of like the incarnation of Christ. Because that, like, they cannot understand the word say embodied in ink.
Mm-hmm. Hold on, I froze. You froze. Hold on, you froze. It wasn't me. That's not me. Hold on. If you're still there, can you guys hear me? If somebody's in the chat, give me a thumbs up if you can still hear me. I think it was Ivan's internet here. That's all right. We're on Europe time. Okay, there we go. I'm back. I was back. I don't know if you.
It was on my end. It was on my end, I think. So, like, what I was trying to say is that, like, the problem with let's say this, let's say, to me, it's a very, let's say, even though they're aliens, this is in a sense a form of apotheosis, right? Because like, even the very idea that you could unlock time through technology, that is kind of like, because there's this interplay between, let's say, science, as they understand science as like the intellectual, the abstract, and they put language in this middle place as being, yes, abstract, but the point where the abstract meets, let's say, the concrete. And to go back to what you were saying about, let's say, the two translations that they do, the Sanskrit translation that she does, is kind of like in line with a backhanded comment that she made, like, you made quick work of those insurgents. It's like she
Yeah.
it's almost accusatory. It's like
It's like, lady, you knew what you were doing when the CIA came to you and asked for information to translate the insurgents. You knew what was going to happen. Come on.
yeah, it's like what, and this like very lib, like virtue signaling, that it's like kind of, you're not supposed to do that. It's like, wait, whoa,
I wish
lady.
Alex was in the helicopter with him so he could say, in the beginning was the word, huh? You never thought of that, did you? The eye not seen, the ear not heard. Next, call. Come on in,
and
caller. Yeah.
and what was the other translation? The kangaroo translation was actually a lie that she tells, and she says, but it proves my point. Like, I lied, but like it still performatively does what it wanted to say. So there's kind of like a pragmatism there, which is also present in Interstellar, when you have like the whole exchanges between, let's say, like 90% honesty, and like the fact that he lies to Amelia Brandt before he sacrifices himself, and they make a plot. It's not a plot point really, but it's kind of like a recurring theme, like in this that you mentioned, like as not working. Somehow in Interstellar, I kind of want to forgive it, but at the same time, it's like, why are these movies telling me that you need to lie?
Yeah.
And going back to the word aspect, like both Interstellar and Arrival are fundamentally about, let's say, how words are able to transmit culture, and because the way in which the protagonist Cooper communicates with his daughter is through the library. So like the
Yep.
daughter is able to, let's say, receive this knowledge because she's receiving it through, in the same way. It's almost like this. I don't want to say this is what the movies are about, but it also weirdly participates in this trend of Hollywood making films about films. Like, it's like culture trying to self-reflect, and in a sense, like one who has a more, let's say, traditional perspective might want to say, okay, this is nice because like they're acknowledging the importance of tradition and of transmitting things, and let's say of recognizing the past. And even, let's say, Interstellar, like many movies, does the, the thing with the title of the books is actually thematically relevant. And if you
Yeah.
look at the, yeah,
Did
so
you notice the title of any of the books in
yeah, actually,
Interstellar?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they have Lois Lowry. They've got The Stand. So both are obvious dystopian or apocalyptic books, or authors and books. The Stand is an apocalyptic tale, and then of course you got Lois Lowry with I don't know if it wasn't The Giver. I covered The Giver on my channel, but the set designer is for Interstellar is, right?
No.
I'm gonna blow you guys away. Here comes the exclusive. The set designer for Interstellar is Nathan Crowley. Nathan Crowley, as far as I read this somewhere and I can't find it anymore, but Nathan Crowley is a he's not a direct descendant, but he is a cousin of Al Crowley, of Aleister Crowley. Did you know that?
No.
Makes sense. Of course, that's going to be the case. He's done a bunch of films, but Interstellar is where I discovered that he did the Prestige. He does the Christopher Nolan movies. I don't know. That might not be true at all, but it is interesting in terms of kind of synchro with the books. But I like, it's also great product placement. They keep putting the Hamilton watch in there, right? With the ticking. I gotta say, when I saw Interstellar, I saw it in IMAX when it came out, and I knew as soon as she said, "I have a ghost," and we saw the books fall, that it was going to be him. I knew that was good. It had to be. And figuring out things in binary language, he's talking to himself. He's behind the bookcase. It makes sense that he would be behind the books because, in film, especially in film, and singularly in literature, the house, for one, always stands for a symbol of the psyche. So the mirrors, the windows, opening the door, coming into the door, opening, letting someone into your life, etc. But the bookcase is often a symbol for the soul. And think of John Donne's Meditation 17, where he says, to paraphrase, he says that each of our lives, I was just teaching this again. This is one of the excerpts in Meditation 17, and he says in it that we all essentially write our book in terms of our life, but when we're gone, no man is an island, and when we're gone, the leaves aren't scattered to the wind, but God will bind up all the sheafs of our pages into one great big book. So the soul and the library makes sense, that all the and books, also in terms of the language with Arrival, I mean, we do have ink blots on a screen, but that's what pages of books are. They're just weird symbols that we've thrown onto a thing. And if you didn't know what you were looking at, you'd be looking at sort of repeating patterns of symbols on a page. But I think that I don't know. You mentioned 2001 Space Odyssey earlier. There's an obvious homage in both of these films, especially in Arrival, because I think it's when they go up into the contact lens, all seeing eye, Gnostic egg, black pill, gravity makes no sense to them. They're in a life without gravity. And so everything that they've known, down is up is down, and it's a as above, so below. We see them walking and it becomes, upside down, but it's also like as above, so sideways. And they walk into a giant glowing panoramic iPhone screen, and they're literally tapping on a screen. There's taps on the screen. So the screen and technology represents the veil to be pierced, into the other side. And yet there's communication with them, and it's interesting that the aliens can affect physically life on the other side of the screen, but we can't do it to them until they take her into the black pill and she goes through this mystery sequence into the other side and like takes a kind of trip to the other world, right? Or into the underworld. Her hair is even, I think of the poem Lady Lazarus by Sylvia Plath, because she's a redhead and her hair is looks like it's on fire, but she's also floating in the mists of time. And this giant archon appears to her as if they're in some sort of abyss. And in the movie, they make it seem like, she goes to the other side to gain her knowledge to come back, and now she has a personal knowledge, and she's even given a code, right? She's given a code whereby she talks to the Chinese man, the Xi Jinping doppelganger, and then quotes his wife's dying words back to him. So she's taken a trip to the underworld, which is a completely archetypal. That's in all of the archetypal epics. It's in the Aeneid, it's in all of it's even in Beowulf, going into the underworld. But it's just interesting that, like you said, they have this Sophia character do this, and that it is, Amy Adams, Bryce Dallas Howard, what's her face in Interstellar, I can't remember her name. There's another one. Kate Blanchett is a kind of form of this, but it's this weird archetype they're pushing with the redheaded woman as being the Sophia, or the kind of scarlet woman who saves everybody, which I think is interesting.
Yeah. Well, I want to join these two threads in the sense that you were talking about this, let's say, the soul and the library, the soul, let's say, and this gnosis, this knowledge, is being a way in which like the soul coalesces towards, let's say, a meaning that is basically, let's say, if you're given, let's say, the word, if you're a Christian, you believe that in Christ all of you is recapitulated, right? And like if you're a Gnostic or whatever, knowledge, like in a sense, is what gives all of your like different experiences a sense of unity, right? And like there is a way in which, like, if you're a secular humanist, and if you're like thinking about, let's say, even the way that your memory works, Arrival is from the year 2016. So if you're thinking about, for example, the way that memory operates, like this society, our modern society, which relies on therapy, for example, or art to guide it spiritually, like the main, let's say, function of therapy is to go back into your past and, let's say, revisit past memory to change it. So you go back into the past, you change the past, and through that change, now you're, let's say, transformed and repaired, right? So like in this sense, you could say this is a very Pajoyan slash Petersonian take, that like the way that therapy works is like this love that transcends time and basically repairs you, let's say, out of time, let's say. So if you take this approach, there is like a hint in that approach to memory, where it's just like you take the pill, you take the pill, and now you're golden. You achieved apotheosis, because now you're truly who you were supposed to be, right? Because now you can redefine the past by your present. Like you had to just simply get your adult self into your child self, and make your adult self like talk to your child self and tell your child self you're no longer a child, or this situation wasn't this way. It was actually different. So that's why I wanted to mention the thing about lies, and the thing about, let's say, this let's say trying to strive apotheotically to towards this knowledge, because it seems as though like loving your soul, because both of these films have this theme. Like, for example, in the case of Interstellar, it's literally the world rebelling against man, and there's even a line that says, it's like kind of like we kind of deserve it, in a sense. It's like we've treated the world poorly, so we kind of deserve that the world is rebelling against yourself. And this is
Yeah.
kind of like the movies are telling you, like, love yourself in order to be able to, it's like kind of like be nicer to yourself. You're too hard because of your past trauma, right? And
Yeah.
I think that this is like a very, let's say, pernicious kind of message, because it has all of the, let's say, all of these elements that, it's not just globalism as a political ideology, but it's also like these this progressive uh, notions of, like, for example, like, why are borders bad? We need to get everything to be communicated, right? We
Yeah.
need, like, nations borders are arbitrary, and like the foreigner is good because the foreigner is going to give us exactly what we need.
Yeah.
And
What have they done
okay,
to the earth? Tied her with fences and dragged her down, right? Yes, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
so I think that, like, these films, even though I kind of agree with you, BLA. Like, for example, I wouldn't rank Arrival as a great film. I think it's
Hmm.
good, technically speaking. I think that the director is technically skilled. Um, I think Interstellar is a really good film, and it has flaws, but like most films have flaws, it's still a good film. The thing is, what are they trying to say at a spiritual level? Like, what are they trying to communicate? We didn't mention, though, that, for example, Dr. Man is like Colonel Kurtz in like in Apocalypse Now, and like he's this, let's say, brilliant but insane guy who went to the heart of darkness and got lost himself. And the missing is, for a Gnostic film, like, what makes these characters be the ones to be able to grasp it? Like, why does Cooper know why? Why is Cooper different from Dr. Mann? And why is this in Arrival? Why is this redheaded woman like able to grasp these things? Because when I first rewatched the film, like, to do this stream, like the first thing she does as a expert linguist is like grab a whiteboard and write human on it and show the whiteboard. You
Yeah.
didn't need a linguist for that. And then she goes on a spiel about like how these aliens might not understand questions. And I
Hmm.
was like, dude, that's literally retarded. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
That's literally super dumb. How can you imagine that
Because they
that
have a question because they came here in the first place seeking something. So they have some sort of question, right? And also, they are squid. I thought maybe it was that she was saying that they'll be annoyed by the question mark, like I am. I hate question marks. I hate writing a question mark. It's the most annoying piece of punctuation to write. I don't see. Is Dr. Mann the Michael Caine character?
No, no,
I,
no. No, no. Dr. Mann
which
is
one's
is
Dr. Mann?
Matthew McConaughey. No, Matthew McConaughey. Matt Damon.
Yeah. So Matt Damon to me is not a Kurtz character because Kurtz wants to stay. He is there and he has a way of speaking that is he speaks he's a as he says in the book, he's a special being. And Kurtz has mastered, he's there in civilization, mastering a civilization, and he's been lifted up as this, he's some sort of gigantic archon. Matt Damon is a groveling, Matt Damon is, to me, is one of the characters that he meets on the various junctures on the boat in the book, who are like he gets to, like when he first gets to Africa, he gets to, they're pointing the guns into the continent and he can't understand that. They're just shooting into nothingness. And he gets there and he meets this guy that's there before, and he said, and the guy's basically like, this place is a shithole. I got to get out of here. Right. That's the Matt Damon character. The Kurtz character has been absorbed into the place and doesn't want to leave. And also, he's not cowardly like the Matt Damon characters. For a second, I was thinking the Matt Damon character is Matt Damon's playing against type with this because he's a kind of a coward, but he does that in The Departed as well. They picked a guy who was a sniveling character to play in a film who was going to take the oxygen off. And then what I loved about his character is just at the moment where he's about to do a kind of Kurtz-like speech, what he thinks is a Kurtz speech, there is a point in human history, and then he gets sucked out into space. And I like that they did that in the movie because it showed, again, if the other characters are beginning in media res in terms of their conversation, he's getting sucked out in the middle of it. So I thought that was great. Get rid of this guy, right? He's got to go out into space. He go out into space, man. He go out into space, right? But I think that, and then when I was thinking of the Michael Caine character, the Michael Caine character also, the Michael Caine character is kind of like the guy who sends Willard on the journey in the first place. He's not the Kurtz character. He's at the beginning, but he doesn't know what's at the end. But I don't know. I think that, I don't know. I now I'm starting to think of Arrival in terms of Hollywood as a movie that Denis Villeneuve had to do in order to make Dune. He had, and I bet you that's part, because you know how directors take deals in order to get another film. And Denis Villeneuve is a great filmmaker. I think Prisoners is one of the best movies of the last 20 years. It's so good. It's so dark. And it really presents a dark portrayal of Satanism in its kind of true, probably very close to truth workings in the world. Complete with labyrinth and Masonic symbolism and all this stuff in the movie. It's a very well done movie. Snakes, David Dastmalchian is in it. It's a really good movie, but there's a scene in it that reminded me of, I just read this book by this guy, Jose Saramago, who wrote the book, The Double. And it's what his movie Enemy is based on. Enemy is Jake Gyllenhaal with a doppelganger. He finds himself, and most people, when they think of the doppelganger, it's like they find a character who looks and acts exactly like them, but it's not. It's themselves. He meets himself. And to spoil the movie, spoiler, at the end of the film, Jake Gyllenhaal walks into his apartment, and we see it like this spider. The woman is turned into a spider and shrieks and pulls backwards. And it's kind of it's a little bit ambivalent in the movie. Our thought about it is ambivalent. What we see in the movie, what the spider represents, is it that the character has gone back to, he's returned to his former self. He sees women as objects. He's crushing a spider in the Eyes Wide Shut Club like he does at the beginning. The spider represents his hold, the Black Widow's hold on the male, But there is a scene in Arrival that's exactly like that. We walk in and we see it in her dreams. She's now it's when he brings up the dreams. You were just talking about dreams, and she's starting to dream in the language of the Lovecraft space squids. And we see the alien in her dreams in her room. So in terms of a psychic phenomenon within the movie, it's now she's in the location with these archons, and she's going to become one with it. She sort of is foreshadowing how she's going to be the savior. And even her child is going to build little simulacra of the creatures. My other question was, they bring up a canary in the coal mine. They have like a little bird, right? So they can breathe. And it was also, this was a sort of predictive programming movie, I think, in a way. I don't know if literally, but with the they have the mask, they have the bubbles, they take off the mask. I was glad to see they finally take off the damn space. I'm like, look, man, if you're gonna go talk to the aliens or whatever these things are, the little trash suit is not going to help. Just go up there and talk to them. Who cares? But my question was, why didn't they bring a cat? Because everybody knows, everybody loves kitty cats, and the cat, the cat up there the aliens would love the cat, and we would all be one. I guess. I don't know. They never did anything with the damn bird. The bird is clearly fine, and they don't take the spacesuits off. And then we get the Koresh, Ruby Ridge, Waco military cadre inside shooting at the other people. So we're supposed to see that, because he's been listening to the AJ character. So he's been radicalized by AJ. And so he's going to start getting, give me a break, man. I thought that was weak in the movie because it's inverted. Both of these are inverted, like you were just mentioning, in terms of goodness and virtue and the message. I don't see art in general as I try not to look at it as taking a message. There is a message in terms of what's pushed with a propaganda bent or through the military, and obviously, but I think that the message that people take is, like you were mentioning, people getting their values and their spiritual values from movies. And that's the mistake people make, is that we look at movies and people want to, they want to take their values from what is given to them on a screen with these larger than life people. But we get our morals from God, from Christianity. We see when we watch movies, we see what we don't want to be, what we are, and what we could be, but we don't take morals from the movies. We see a depiction of what they want to be morals. And that, I guess, in a sense, is their messaging. But like you were saying, I mean, it's pretty, I don't know if both movies, it's weird because it's both subtle and in your face, in terms of the values that they're portraying. The subtle thing for most people would be the subtlety of the pushing the Alex character and we're all a bunch of wackos, right? But we watch the movie and go, come on, give me a break. The moon thing in Interstellar is particularly egregious.
Yeah. Well, in regards to like the messaging or not, like I had my phase where I thought, like, in terms of movies are being just propaganda, and not because I wanted to make propaganda movies, but because like I took, like, if you're a materialist, like, the movie is a tool, is a tool that uses matter to inject, let's say rationale to order matter. So it's like a self-replicating kind of meme. Like, and in that sense, like, perhaps I'm wrong for being too, let's say, severe, but I always, like, my first, like, criteria to analyze a film is, like, the protagonist's journey. Like, how does the protagonist solve the problem? Like, every movie has a problem, right? Every movie has
the
a
hero's
problem.
journey.
And like, what is what the movie is framing, not just as the problem, because in the case of Arrival, like, the way that the movie is framing reality itself, like, if you're taking a film as a, let's say, as a cosmological image, then I would reject the movie from the beginning. I would say, no, this world does not exist, But the thing is, the problem that I see is that phenomenologically, like, we cannot distinguish between reality and fiction. Like, our heart cannot actually parse the film from, waking life. And the problem for me is that the film itself as a medium is so powerful that you either fall under its spell, or it impacts you, spiritually speaking, to the point of, like, either agreeing with it or being horrified by it. And, like, what I see in
It's almost
Arrival,
Aristotelian, in terms of pathos. Watching the movie, pity and terror, right at the tragic end of a film, certainly,
yeah. And what I see, for example, in Arrival, is that the arc is basically, if I had to think of why, to answer the question of why is this woman the one to, like, acquire this knowledge of the gods, it's fundamentally her rebelliousness. And if I compare it side to side with a Christian cosmology, I would say oh, so we're basically having to self crown ourselves. So, like, we are the best. We're the. It's like this, like Americanism, like that
Mhm.
has to go everywhere and impose liberalism in every
Yeah,
corner of the world.
you're either with the terrorists or you're against us. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, we're good because my freedom, and
Mhm.
it's like because
They're
like
not
we,
letting women drive. They're not
yeah,
letting women drive. Right. Yeah.
yeah, that kind
So
of
I went
rap.
to a park in Botswana. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah,
what you were
yeah,
saying about I think that's part of that is the willing suspension of disbelief. I mean, when we're watching a movie, we are aware that we're like in our living room or in a cinema and we're with other people. We're not in space. Like we know that. We're watching Matthew McConaughey. We're clearly watching him cry, right? But the other question is, why don't they talk back? They can't send a laser beam back through the space time continuum because they get the messages. Why can't they send them back? If it's one way, it's got to be the other. I didn't understand that. And also, what happens to his son at the end? Right? Why did he just go visit his daughter? Why didn't he go visit his son? Come on, they didn't show that. They didn't wrap that up. Dude, go see Casey Affleck, man. He's been holding down the corn the whole time. But we know we're not in space. We know all those things. But at some point, like you said, we start to see the cosmology of the film, and that's the world, the life of the world within the film. That's a world that we're getting a glimpse into. And ironically, we are looking through a rectangular screen watching the film while she's watching a rectangular screen watching through the other veil, which is at the aliens. So, and we're in a kind of a capsule. We're in our living room. We're in a cinema or whatever. So it becomes it's like you said, we can't help but in terms of our brain chemistry to think of a meta version of our own world. That's that happens in the Matrix. It happens in all these Gnostic movies. That becomes the case. But like you said, the hero's journey is important, and I think that's a good place to start with movies. Is do they gain anything? Do they learn anything? Do they rise? Do they fall? What happens? Is there anything learned? Is there anything achieved through the course of the movie? And one of the big questions I think especially with postmodern movies is the hero a villain? Because oftentimes we see these movies and the Matt Damon character is a kind of an aberration from that because he's clearly a villain. But um, what are they searching for and what do they want? The Interstellar has I think is a better film in terms of that because they realize that love, faith and love is the greatest. I mean, love is what makes the world go round. God's love is what infinitely creates, creation. Everything grows, everything happens second to second through that. We can't survive on hate. We can't. Nothing is made through that. That's an absence of that or an inversion. So it has to be love. But in Arrival, we get her and her daughter's love, but that ultimately ends in a weird sacrifice in the film. Now, in the life of the film, the daughter has a thing, but then I start to question: did her daughter get the thing from her being with the aliens? Right? Did her going up into the space capsule give her the disease that she's going to give to her daughter? And if that's the case, then it means that she's taking on the thing that she's going to sacrifice her daughter in order to create this book and to make humankind go on. But the problem with that morally is that the whole world can go instead of her daughter. Once you sacrifice your daughter for that, the whole world might as well go. Right? So is that the sort of happenstance correction that's made? Is that the thing that happens through happenstance in the film, spiritually speaking, I suppose?
I think that's the case because that's the reason they give for the divorce. Because like
Hmm.
he tells her, you made the wrong choice,
Right.
and like Ian, the husband, when she tells him that she knew that she would have a daughter with a disease that would kill her, uh, he tells her, you made the wrong choice.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and like symbolically there's like a resonance here, like in the
Hmm.
sense of like the price to pay. Like the movie is fine staying within the, let's say, abstract intellectual level and saying, okay, no, this needs to happen because if not like continuity, whatever. But it doesn't even flesh it out. But I liked your theory crafting about it being kind
Yeah,
of like
because
a
we don't need her to sacrifice her child. We don't need that sacrifice. We've already had the greatest sacrifice. God became literally man and God and sacrificed himself for everyone forever. So we don't need that. We don't need that sacrifice. Now, on a basic level, it's like, yeah, people sacrifice themselves for people every day, themselves. They sacrifice themselves. They jump on a grenade or they work hard to feed their family. I mean, even Matthew McConaughey is sacrificing his familiar, his family relationships to go out into space and to achieve, and he's got a talent and he's going to go do these things and he has to do those things. He has to do them. Right. And she needs to understand. But at the same time, it's like, I guess maybe that's the great pull in life. It's like, you shouldn't have left. You shouldn't have left your daughter, but you're still called to do certain things. But the question is, who's doing the calling, you know?
yeah.
So
Yeah, also like to join those two things together, because I think it's fantastic that we got to this point of like discussing, let's say, what's the trade-off, because the movie clearly presents these things as trade-offs. I would say that Christianity itself like wants you to be able to do the trade-off, but doesn't actually like expect you to for it. We've got like so it's like it's like Abraham, you got to be willing to sacrifice Isaac, but then
yeah,
God is like, no, you can keep him because like you were willing to do it in the
yes,
first place, right?
yeah,
And what I was going to say before it cut off, it was like I always see, perhaps my analysis of film is kind of pagan, in the sense that I'm always seeing films not in a propagandistic sense, but more of like a society affording sense, in the sense that like culture affords society. Like there is no society without culture, and the fact that you need narratives, be they religious narratives or be they, let's say, narratives that are below, let's say, the official, cultural hegemonic view about the cosmos and metaphysics, right? B- Even like fairy stories or those kinds of things that Peugeot likes to talk about, even those kinds of things afford you society. So it's important to notice what kind of stories your society is telling you,
mhm,
because even if there is something wrong in trying to elevate, let's say, a film to a place of like giving you the enlightenment you need to self transcend or anything like that. Movies themselves, like going into a dark room, paying money, like gathering together with people to watch like a big screen that is emitting light, it itself is a ritual. And
mhm,
the kind of story that you're receiving is actually an image of how you're supposed to live. So if of course there's the possibility that you're being told a story of how not to live, right? Like where
mhm,
the protagonist is actually clearly evil or something like
yeah,
that. But there's the fact that the protagonist has to, let's say, marshal something from him inside himself or from outside himself to, let's say, solve the hero's journey, is in itself like a way to send a signal that this thing is what we need to, let's say, restore our fallen world, right? It's like this, like the hero's journey tells you what you need to reestablish society, what you need for the good king to come back, right?
yeah,
Like Robin Hood is like he's like a rebel, and he's holding the fort until, let's say, King Richard comes again, right? So
mhm,
so it's showing you a way in which, let's say, you can go through, let's say, the death that is like the fallen situation you're in. It's like it's a travel, like, but there's always a going back home, right? You go to the
mhm,
realm of the dead, you take sometimes something good from the dead back, but there's always a can't stay because you're living that. And way that I think that these movies solve this problem is that you have to cuck yourself. And this is what I didn't like about Arrival. Arrival is like you have to cuck yourself in order to be able to for the greater good, right? And it's like, dude, I understand that self-sacrifice is important, but you
Yeah.
haven't told me self-sacrifice towards what. You can say the word love, but are you actually being loving? Because if not, love is love, like do whatever you want, like love whatever thing you want. But like I wouldn't say that an Islamic jihadist is going to heaven, and he might have in his own mind the same story arc as a hero that I have, right? But
Mhm.
like these movies, they're making like a mountain out of a molehill, in the sense of trying to worship heroism. Like you cannot watch a Marvel movie without there being like a reference to a self-sacrifice. And
Yeah.
it's not just that they're stealing from the Christian story, or even that the Christian story is so embedded into the fabric of reality that you cannot avoid it. But like it's more like, well, you have to sacrifice something. There is a trade-off. Okay, there is a trade-off, but what are you trading it for? And what you said, PLA, about this, like trading off her daughter for the greater good, like it could be framed in a way that is Christian, or that it's good, or that is like life affording.
Yeah.
But you're always having to ask yourself, like, why exactly did we have to do this? And if
Yeah.
the movie
And
is
she's not
telling me,
sacrificing herself. She's sacrificing her daughter, right? Um, there's somebody else to sacrifice. So is the hero only the hero because he strives for Christ-like behavior, right? Some sort of Christ-like virtue. He sacrifices himself. He sacrifices himself for his family. He fights for his family. He loves at all costs, rather than someone who sacrifices A, for the globalist hegemony, and B, for sacrifices her child, for a better world, whatever that means, um, or for them to have this. I mean, the end of Interstellar is literally a circle world, right? Oh, there's no more gravity anymore, right? Up is down, down is up, so everything's inverted. Um,
exactly,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. That's the thing, because these people are basically trying to. For me, that's why I'm
They
very,
also, by the way,
way.
they also find their black hole bubble off the coast of Saturn, which I found interesting, right off of the hexagonal infinite storms on Set. Right, I thought that was
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
yeah.
When I went on MSN for the first time, which is like the MSM news, and it's unbelievable the number of space things. Everything is space. Um, space, or finding the wormhole. It's all clickbait too. It's we found this otherworldly alien site on Mars. Oh, it looks otherworldly because it's from another world, because it's from Earth. So they found the wreckage of the whatever on Mars, all that stuff, which is, they found a picture of a damn porta potty in Algeria or something, and put it on the thing. So I don't know.
Well, on that note, like you mentioned, and shit, my
No, I
internet
got
is
you. I can hear you now. Yeah, it's all right.
um
We do
Saturn,
it
like,
live here, people. We do it live. We do it live. All
yeah.
right.
And
Yeah.
so Saturn is like the planet that represents like agriculture. So
Mm.
it's like it's already like, to me, in my own, let's say, Christian mind, it's like you're telling me that Cain's sacrifice is actually the good one. It's like I'm
Mm.
sacrificing you
Sure.
for
Yeah.
what I believe is the right cause. And it brings me back to the stabbies. It's like, dude, you
Mm-hmm.
just made like movies justifying the stabbies. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like,
Yeah.
no, you have to sacrifice yourself for the greater good. It's like,
Right.
no. It's yourself. You have to sacrifice the best fruit that you have, not the fruits of your neighbor. Like
Right.
it doesn't work
Yeah.
that way. So in that sense, like I feel like these are movies that ultimately justify technocracy.
Uh-huh.
Even like Arrival is super pro globalism, by the way,
Yeah.
like overtly. It's like, oh,
Technocracy and transhumanism. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, we wouldn't have these problems if we just had a one world government.
Mm-hmm.
It's like,
Yeah.
oh, we have to transcend our differences and not fight. Meanwhile, we have to kill that guy to save
Mm-hmm.
all of us. It's like, no. that's kind of like an inversion of Christianity, where
Yeah.
Christianity is like, no, 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 I'm going to die for the for
Mhm.
for my fellow man, but in service of Christ. So like even in like I see that there's like perhaps I'm mistaken, but like if you take Christ out of the picture and you try to, you're gonna always subvert like the story. You're always gonna like try to like shift the center of reality to like an idol that you have, and we all have them, like we're human, we're fallen, but it's like, why are you trying to reinvent the wheel? And I mentioned the thing about like people making art into an idol, like making, let's say, but I feel like these filmmakers are doing it themselves as well, like
You were
because
mentioning, yeah, you were mentioning paganism, and it just occurred to me that her journey is a sort of Odin allegory. I mean, she's upside down. She's not hanging from a Yggdrasil or whatever, but she's upside down because we saw inversion. Up is down, down is up, and then she goes into the whirlpool, the mists of time, the whirlpool, and she brings back language. And so that's what Odin does. Now, the eye, Odin sacrifices his eye, but is sacrificing her eye, her vision of the future, right? So she sacrificed her vision in order to have a second sight. And also, again, when the egg is looking at us, the black egg that is levitating anti-gravity, when it turns, it's like a lens of an eye. It's like a Adreno eye looking out onto the world. And then also, it also goes lateral. So maybe, and then dissipates into mist right at the end of the film, which is interesting that it just sort of disappears. So maybe her journey is a kind of a pagan apotheosis, like you were saying. Probably I would, most of the time when I'm looking at movies, the question is not because a lot of people, when they look at movies, they say, yeah, but did the filmmakers intend this? But the art doesn't really work like that in terms of an intention. A lot of times this is played out with a proof of this is when you look at what filmmakers or writers say about their own art, which is usually totally different from the work of art that you're seeing. What they say about it should be said in the artwork itself. We can't ask Shakespeare questions. We have his words on the page. So that's the work that lives forever. The characters in film are already living forever because they are eternally young they're frozen in time on the screen, no matter how many, we did Dirty Harry, and it's like Harry Callahan is like 40 years old or whatever in the movie, and now he's 90, so he's frozen as a youth forever, live forever, at least until, of course, like all things, it corrodes and disappears. But I think that the way that artists make movies is that it's absorbed archetypes and everything that we've learned up to a point, like you were mentioning before the stream, intertextuality gets absorbed into the filmmaker. And a lot of times these things are unconscious and unconscious. We see archetypes in what we, there's no way that they think that, there's not somebody in a committee room saying, is this like Odin's journey? Maybe there is, but that's probably not an intention, but it doesn't matter. It's what appears on the screen. And that's clearly, we clearly get different visions of what happens, and art has to work on a multiple levels. I think you can watch Arrival and say it's an alien movie. It's, when I think of Arrival, I think of The Arrival with Charles Sheen, which is, by the way, a pretty good movie, like 1996. But it's an alien movie. So what? We're watching an alien movie. That's fine. That's valid. But it's clearly much more than that. We see multiple levels in it, and the minute that both of these films use metaphysical language to understand science, it clearly takes on something different. It's clearly a hero's journey, a spiritual journey, a journey to the beyond. Again, you mentioned Kubrick, and obviously the sequence in Interstellar, which is the culminating sequence, where he goes into the bubble and Anne Hathaway disappears and he's by himself, is meant to mimic Kubrick's Jupiter and Beyond from 2001. When he goes past Jupiter and he sees the blue diamond formation, he goes through the psychedelic space journey and he ends up meeting the Moonchild. I mean, that's kind of what he does in this. It's just a different vision of it, which is surrounded by a gargantua, which is like a demon of the abyss and a black hole. By the way, the consultant on the movie was Kip Thorne. You know that guy. If you guys have ever seen Kip Thorne, hold on, I got Kip Thorne glasses in here somewhere. Hold on, Kip Thorne is he's like this. Kip Thorne's like this. Well, what I think about the movie is we got to make sure that we have the science down. Right? He's bald, but he wears Dahmer glasses, and we got to make sure that the science is all integral. Let me ask my friend Michio Kaku what he says. Michio Kaku, I'm the other consultant in the movie. Yes, it's great. This is the best science movie. Give me a break, man. You know, it's cool to watch. It's cool to watch, but it's you know.
Yeah, well, I would also take this opportunity. You mentioned that one difference between these two films is that Interstellar is like an original screenplay, while Arrival is an adaptation. So like we cannot be too mean with the director of Arrival, because like adapting a film is actually very very hard. Whereas like making a screenplay from scratch, it's actually way easier because you're already thinking in terms of like let's say the cinematic language, which is way different from the language of literature.
That's true. But he also, they own the rights, and they co-wrote it with him. So once it's like Kubrick making The Shining. He takes Stephen King's novel and completely changes it. And Stephen King says, "Why did you do that?" And he's like, "Because I bought the rights. It's mine now. I'm making the movie. You wrote the book. I wrote the movie. This is the way it is." And Interstellar, like you mentioned, it's written by Christopher Nolan. It's Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, and they've gone way into space with all this. Jonathan Nolan did Westworld, and these guys are the main propagators for transhumanism and technocracy, obviously in film, and they went from independent filmmaking into this major thing. My other problem with Interstellar is that, and I think that Interstellar is a good Christopher Nolan movie. It's obviously a good movie, but the score goes through the whole movie. I like Arrival score much more because the score was done by Johan Johansson, who R.I.P. He had a cocaine OD, which is such a shame because he was an Icelandic musician, and he made the score for this, and he really kind of invented the low drone that we get like in Sicario, which is another very good Denis Villeneuve movie. But we get this low drone, which kind of does what Interstellar does, but Interstellar pushes you there's not a scene in Interstellar that doesn't have the music running. And you forget that it's running at times, but if you pay attention to it and you start to focus on it, you really focus on the fact that it's telling you how to feel. And I don't like that. There are scenes that it could do without that. Sometimes the absence of music is great. Say what you will about the movie Castaway with Thomas Hanks. But I do like in the movie that there is no music. The music is the sound of the waves and the sound of the natural environment until he finally gets away. And then we have the soaring like strings, which is also a little cheap in the movie. I'm not sure how that would be done differently. It's kind of irrelevant, I guess. But sometimes the absence of sound, and you just let the words and the action speak for itself. When you watch a play, you don't get a score the whole time. You have that suspension of disbelief. You're aware you're watching. It's like Peter Griffin says, I'm aware I'm watching a play. You're aware you're watching people on a stage, but it almost speaks to when you watch a really great play, it speaks to the strength of the words rather than the whole thing with the music telling you what to think. So
yeah, well, I kind of disagree there, but not in a way that is like ultimate or defining, in the sense that I see like a certain continuation between like opera and film, in the sense that like I do like when, for example, it even happens to me with like films like Lord of the Rings, where like the score is such a big thing for the film itself that like I don't want to separate the scoring of the film from the, let's say, finished product, right? So it's like almost see them as, let's say, I like the mirroring effect, but like I
Mhm.
also get it that sometimes like it could be cheapened in the sense of like, oh, I got the science down of when to make you cry with the right note in the right moment, and it feels like artificial. And like that's definitely a concern that one can have when it comes to, let's say, overwrought, let's say, scienced out films, because like by now Hollywood knows how to do these things. It's like it knows
Yeah.
how to force these things. But to take the point that you were saying earlier about, let's say, the way in which movies themselves always have to evoke something that from the past, from past experiences from people, and that artists don't even know what they're doing. I think of that more as a, and this is more a theological opinion, but I think that is more of a reflection of, let's say, our human fallenness, in the sense of, like we all live with spiritual realities inside of us. Like we cannot be self-conscious or conscious or self-reflexive about all of them. It's like we simply do them as we breathe. So like you said, I completely agree that sometimes like artists like do things that they don't know how to do. But it also works in the inverted form where, let's say, sometimes artists have an agenda and they don't know how to like enact it. So the end result will always eventually be a reflection of the people's, let's say, passions when they're doing stuff. So even if an artist tries to like say, no, this movie is about this thing, I think there's an element of, let's say, if you have the right lens with which to see these things, it's like, no, 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 here the guy actually slipped. Like even if
Yeah.
Tolkien had like the like intent of making Lord of the Rings like super Catholic, like it has Gnostic elements in it. It's
Uh-huh.
like, why does the ring need to be destroyed? Like, does creation need to be destroyed? It's like we don't get to invent all of the symbols that exist in reality. And in that sense, like I would say that, for example, there's a scene in Arrival where like I would definitely apply this to, which is the scene where like the protagonist meets her love interest, and they're talking about the book, and the love interest quotes her her pretentious opening line. I call it pretentious because like there's no way that, because I know it, because I've done that thing before. Like I had, when I was younger, I did like a I had I entered myself into a essay writing contest, and I won, and I wrote the worst, like the worst, like most pretentious, like milquetoast thing ever, because I wanted to win. And
Yeah.
like it actually won the award.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like I opened with like a pretentious quote from from a literature book, and then
Mhm.
like it was beautifully written, but it said it now, I believe, something completely different. And I know what those openings are about. So within the movie, within the film, we have an explanation, and the protagonist says, no, these lines are meant to, let's say, present the idea in a short form to communicate the idea better.
Mhm.
And that's not what those lines are about at all. Those lines
Mhm.
are about creating a bonding with a reader and making you two part of people who are in the know. Because
Yeah.
like I just quoted, you know, if you know Sun Tzu, then you're elevated. If you know Sun Tzu, I know Sun Tzu, we're part of the elite, class of
Mhm.
people who
You're
know it.
appealing to the ego and the passions of the people judging the contest. It's like if you were applying to college now, you would, and you were writing your college essay, you would have to include things like lived experience, right? And trauma. And you have to include things and that they're immediately going to latch onto. It used to be just words like signify or, but now there's a whole set of coded words you have to use, and that's kind of the case with a lot of things, I think, definitely. And another thing is, even before he knows that in the film, it's his game, right? Oh, I read your book, and she's like, oh, okay, which is weird because they don't have any chemistry in the movie, by the way. There's no chemistry. Um, Matthew McConaughey can have chemistry with just about anyone in the movie. He's just a charismatic figure, and he can have chemistry. But these two characters don't really. I guess maybe that's purposeful because they're alienated, just like aliens. So they are in an alien world now, even within themselves. Back to what you were saying about opera. Also, I think that film in a way mimics opera because we have we have a score, we have music, we have words, we have architecture that we're looking at, a set design, but it is inferior to opera because no matter what with opera, first of all, it's live, and second of all, so it's happening in the moment with us in presence right there, and anything can go wrong. And it's also an elevated world because the characters don't often speak. Even the speaking is lyrical. The libretto makes it so. The reason that characters sing in opera is because that's what the soul would do with the best words in the best order. So that's why they're singing rather than just speaking. So I think that movies often try to be operatic, but they don't accomplish it because we are aware, no matter what, that we're watching characters in a realistic. It's supposed to be a realistic setting. So, like something like Mozart with Don Giovanni at the time when it was written, we look at characters and they're supposed to be realistic, but they're still singing, and it's the ultimate version of what would be if it could be. That's the difference between poetry and prose. But very rarely do films do this. I think that probably The Thin Red Line is a great example of that. And by the way, Arrival. By the way, that's what Joe Biden says. And by the way, the Arrival has elements of The Thin Red Line because there's a kind of surrealistic, nonlinear dream sequence thing that occurs in both movies. And we see close-up shots of nature. We see the child. We see a person looking as if they are a child. We're in a childlike state of innocence. But The Thin Red Line is different because it's elevating. Even though they're in war and there's an alienation with the characters when they get to Iwo Jima or Guadalcanal, they're in war, but they are drawn into themselves. And there's clearly overtly metaphysical, spiritual talk in the movie. It's an impressionistic, kind of quasi-Christian movie. This is something that is clearly pointing in the opposite direction. It's pointing towards oneself in an egoistic sense. Yeah.
Yes. And like what I find so weird about this is that it's very intellectually powerful in the sense of like trying to describe the process of knowledge, and like the rationalization is actually undercutting the process that they're trying to describe in the sense of, let's say, the person attaining, let's say, virtue, the person ascending the existential mountain, the hero, let's say, conquering, let's say, the fundamental problem that is, let's say. And ironically, in both of these films, both in let's say in Interstellar and in Arrival, the protagonist doesn't need help from the outside at all to solve their problem. Like they themselves are somehow able to, a big why, and this is very intelligently, let's say, contrived in the sense that the protagonist's issue has nothing to do with the problem that the rest of the people have.
Right.
It's like
you had the dreams inside you the whole time. It's a psychosphere. It's recurring. Yeah, I can smell it. It smells like aluminum and a metal on your tongue. Yeah.
And ash.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So
I don't like your face. I can see your soul in the corner of your eyes. I don't like your face. I want to do things to it. Junior, don't bring him back here again. Right.
Yeah. So there was something, I think, a little bit poetical in the way that you describe, let's say, I completely agree, and I think it's super beautiful that the singers and the characters in an opera play, they're actually singing their, let's say, their hearts out. They're expressing their innermost being, in the sense of, in the way that a person can pray, presupposing in the act of prayer a distance with God, right? It's like, this is my offering. It's like, this is my offering that I hope you bless. I hope this is good, right? I hope that this feeling can arrive into a solution. And I think in this way, because like a lot of opera has like a very strong pagan elements. Like if you look at Wagner, like his whole imagination is about like these, let's say, fairy beings, in a sense, like commingling into, let's say, a climactic, like let's say, in the case of Wagner, it's not good. It's always, but paganism is like that, because like paganism, in the end, you always lose, right? But like what I think
Except for in
that
Lohengrin, right? The Swan Night, right? Or Siegfried's Funeral March. Yeah. I'm sorry.
and
Yeah. Yeah. Keep going.
what I see that is happening now in film is that like people are so self-conscious and they're so self-aware that like they're trying in a sense to tell a story that accords to their ideology,
Yeah.
but ultimately the ideology doesn't match what they're actually doing spiritually speaking, because like the author cannot write himself out of the play. Like if you have issues, like they will come out in your art, right?
Yeah.
So if your theory doesn't match the reality, then the reality will override the theory, and you will have this, let's say, disconnect between the explanation that you give for the art and the art itself. And mind you, it's not that I expect artists to know exactly what they're doing. It's like, no, I made that choice because no, there's a point where like desire takes over. Like for me, that's like a point where like rationality just like runs out of like ground, and then it's kind of like a flight. But like we have these films like Birdman, which is like, no, just jump, like dare to be yourself, they're all about daring to be yourself. And it's like, oh, what if I dare to be God, what, but in a proper way? Why how about I dare to die like God? How about I dare to be a Christian, because this like whole dare to be yourself, it's like, and who is myself? Like myself is shit. I don't
Yeah.
want to be
Have
that.
you ever seen the movie Ad Astra? Have you seen that movie with Brad Pitt? One of my friends
No.
is in it, so I like that element. But just shouts out Justin Dre, he's in it. But that movie is really the version of what you're discussing. It's a space Kurtz, because the movie begins with they've built a Tower of Babel and they have to go up and fix this tower that goes all the way into space, and they find at the top of the tower that Tommy Lee Jones has become a kind of Kurtz without a people, and he has to face his son Brad Pitt in order to redeem himself, through this sort of apotheosis, like looking over the rest of the world. Or kind of what's the other one? The Watchmen is like that, I suppose. With the guy who, what's his name, the clockmaker, whatever the hell that dude's name is. He's all blue on the other planet. You know, we got to make sure humans don't hurt themselves, right? The
Yeah.
Watchers. Interstellar, has the somebody put it there, right? We don't know who it is, and it's the Watchers. Uh, the Blavatsky Great White Way. Aleister Crowley's up in space. What a terrifying image.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think these are two. It's interesting that these two movies were made, kind of almost in conjunction with one another. I mean, 2014, 2016 is they take a long time to make, and they were both probably very aware that they were making the movies. Um, that often happens in Hollywood. I mean, I have a buddy who, one of my very close friends, wrote a television show, and it was picked up by AMC. AMC went into I think pre-production with it. They were going to make the movie. He got paid for everything that he wrote. He wrote the movie, and then at the last minute, I think it was bought by, I won't name the actor, but it was bought by a big a Hollywood actor, because they were making almost the exact same story at the same time, so they bought it out. And that often happens, because you're in an environment where everyone's sort of, there are only so many ideas that people make, and a lot of the movies that they make, like we were talking about at the beginning. I mean, almost all movies now are Gnostic or The Most Dangerous Game. They just will continue to be. There will be something else, that's has a deeper layer than just sock justice or any of that stuff. That'll continue to be the case for a while, but there will be some other change. I covered Megalopolis, and it was supposed to be the new thing in filmmaking, and it just wasn't. It was just so bad. It was so bad, and maybe that will give rise to something else that's better. Film has to change. It has. There's something that has to change. I mean, even literature changes. The novel didn't really come in until Henry Fielding in the 1700s, and that even that continues to change in terms of its form, but it will always be the written word. But film has to do something to change, because we can't continue to keep getting the same, like you were saying, messages in movies.
Yeah.
Jason says
Well,
cosmic voyeurs are peeping toms. Absolutely.
yeah. Well, I think that the problem with film is that it's a winner take all market in the sense that
Hmm.
you
Absolutely.
don't it's like you're seeing titans battling each other
Or
for
like she says in the movie, a non-zero sum game. You remember that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, that those kinds of things were in vogue in that at that time. I remember, like when I myself discovered that term when I was I don't know in my late teens, early 20s, something like that. I was like, oh yes, we can all win, and it's like and it's almost like discovering it's like discovering magical thinking once again without noticing it.
Right. Yeah, we can all be president. Uh-huh. Who
Yeah.
would want to be? But yeah, we can all be astronauts. Again, who wants to be damn astronaut? I mean, look, I'll be in the pod, right? Not the pod here, but you put me out there and you put me with streaming and infinite music and the robot helper, that looks like the one in Interstellar, and I would be fine, but not for everybody, and uh yeah, it's gotta change.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
but if it's just Netflix, man, you're gonna have
Oh no. Oh no, don't give me that. I want a space catalog of every movie ever made, every TV show, and I can write books and I can live stream from space and just
ah
talk. Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah.
I'll twiddle the knobs or whatever. Um, but whatever.
No, yeah,
Anyway,
definitely,
man.
definitely.
Yeah, so I think, hey, if you're in here from over at my channel, what's up, Jason? Everybody, and if you're watching this later, I'll put up another link for people to follow. I hope people will sub to your channel, man, and that you keep going with this stuff. And I love that you had me on here to do the movie analysis. Um, so this was a good time. And somebody had just mentioned the other day in a comment on one of my streams, hey, will you do Interstellar? And I was like, yeah, we're doing it Wednesday, so here you go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming, man, because
Yeah.
it's super. First of all, I think it's super good to do collaborations in general. Second of
Yeah.
all, it's like it's super good when you get to like do things with people that you admire, that you respect, and that you think like these people see it, right? Because we're in a point where like we actually need to, let's say, defend our values and not do it just from a negative perspective, not
Right.
just like tearing other things down, but it's like no, you can discern, you can take the good things, you can take and you can see how things participate in a in a dance, because it's like all of these things were created to be good, right? Like
Yeah.
all of these things were created to be good, and if they were created to be good, then we can find these things. But it doesn't mean that we ignore the bad things and we just like shovel our faces with the crap that the people are trying to sell to us. But
Yes,
you know,
you're right, because after all, we live in the world. We live in a fallen world. We live in the world. We're all people. And, I mean, I understand when people get to a point and they're like, I throw away all movies. I'm not ever watching a movie again. I can understand that, is that if that's part of your journey, man, if that's, whatever. But I'm not doing that. I'm going to keep listening to music, keep watching movies, keep reading books. And maybe we watch them so that you don't have to, or so people can get a different insight. And also, I think that, whether it's 7 people or 700 or 7,000 or whatever that watch, I think it's important to use what we have here to discuss things, because after all, at the end of the day, as they say, people like hearing people talk really about anything. And that's a new phenomenon, and that's also something that I especially get as I'm older. If I gotta, hopefully one of these days I'm going to be able to get a Toyota 4Runner and get down and drive 1,000 miles and see my family at Christmas. And I'll be able to do that. And when I do that, when I was younger and I did that in my Chevy Blazer, I would time my trip to trance albums. I'd put on ATB or whatever, and I would every CD is about an hour. So if I got through 14 of them, then it's 14 hours. And now I just put on a podcast and listen to whatever continuously the whole time. I just want to hear people talking. And maybe that's probably a statement also on the alienation in the triple postmodern world, that people don't have anybody to talk to or to listen to them. And so it's important that, people keep talking. It's also important because, I mean, look, man, aside from any political thing, the Rogan thing was a 3-hour podcast, and that affected a lot of people. And so doing long form is important, no matter what it's about, whether it's one person listening or a million. So
yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And thanks again, man, because like I always not only appreciate the content itself, but like I like the actual making of it, and to have like partners like who can like let's say talk in the same. It makes you feel less crazy, makes you feel like,
more and sometimes more crazy, but also less. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and well, I'll try to BLA. I'll try to make it available in some way, so you can like also re-upload it if you want it in your
Thanks,
in
man.
your
Appreciate it.
yeah.
Thanks, buddy.
So
Appreciate it, man.
that will be the stream.